Hey guys, and welcome to another video. So for the past, 5 days or so, a lot of you have been watching my videos, and I've been saying, hey guys, I've only played 3 maps. I've not played the 4th map yet, but I'll give you some opinions later on, and you've been rolling your eyes and thinking, my god, WP, I ran there in the second day, and I played the map ages ago. Come on, get to it. Well, to you people, I've listened, I've heard, and I've gone to the 4th map now. And I've conquered. So today I want to talk a little bit about the Dragon Stand for those of you who may not have seen it. Now, as you can see from the title, I am warning you that this is a little bit spoilery. Only a little, to be entirely clear to you before we get into anything. There's nothing about the personal story here whatsoever. There is a big cinematic fight you will be seeing on the footage that is very much to do with Morgemoth, and through context you'll probably understand some stuff about where the game went in terms of story, but it's stuff you almost definitely presumed about the plot of Heart of Thorns before you even bought the game. But I do want to throw that warning out to you guys because this is sort of right towards the end of the timeline as to where the story takes place. So what is the 4th map? The 4th map is named Dragon Stand. In terms of geographically, it's right next to Ratasum. So close to Ratasum, in fact. You know these jokes that we had an entire expansion that just gives us Ratasum's backyard? Well, the devs played into this in a fascinating and awesome way. There's a hidden area you can access in this map from which, looking out into the distance beyond the horizon, you can see Ratasum itself, physically right there. And you're rewarded for going there for getting a mastery point and also a small achievement. So it really is very close. I thought that was fantastic that the devs added that. It really gives you some perspective as to where Heart of Thorns is taking place with regard to the rest of the world, as it really does feel quite distant. You hear about the impact on the outside world, but this is one of those places where you really get to see, you know, somewhere that you're so familiar with right there before your very eyes. Dragon Stand isn't your standard map. It doesn't have that many different events in it. It doesn't have that much in terms of world completion to do there. It doesn't have that much in terms to do with dialogue or much verticality even, especially compared to the other maps. It's fairly basic, and it has a very unique mechanic with it that we've never seen in Guild Wars 2 before, where on a large map, a big open world map, the game closes the map down and kicks you out of it after a certain period of time. I think it's about an hour and a half period of time. So when you first load into this map, you'll immediately know things are different because in the top right it says map closes in an hour and a half or however long you've got left. Should you be in the map at that point and you haven't pushed any of the meta events or done anything major there, you just get kicked out. It closes the entire thing, spawns a new one, and puts you in that. And they do this so that they can do some quite dramatic stuff with regard to locking players out of various areas of the map and doing fun stuff with the meta events they're in. Why specifically here? Well, because this is kind of the new ore, in some senses. It's kind of the Heart of Thorns version of the final map where the Pact and soldiers are making a big push to fight, finally, to the doorsteps of an Elder Dragon and to fight it. So, this is something I've been very excited to see how ArenaNet would do for the expansion. Back at launch, Ore had some really interesting ideas. It was made of 3 maps, and unfortunately, because of the way Guild Wars 2 deals with those maps, and it can't lock people out and make all waypoints contested everywhere, you kind of had a situation where you had the first map, Straits of Devastation, that had 3 really badass autumn meta events that were thematically about pushing into ore, breaking through walls, accessing new areas that you couldn't access before, and eventually getting to the Dragon's doorstep. But people rarely did them. These metas have never been particularly popular. And for people who were doing the personal story, they'd just skip it. They would just, run through some of the already open gates or sneak around them to access waypoints on the other side. And then you'd never really go back to Straits. You could just go straight into Malcor's Leap. And then from Malcor's Leap, you could do the same to the 3rd map, the Cursed Shore. And so there have been these ideas on these maps of the pack slowly pushing through, but people didn't play into it that much. I've always loved the idea of a Straits of Devastation, where the 3 meta events, the Northern Invasion, the Central Invasion, and the Southern Invasion, all had to be pushed together in one glorious, massive, army-style assault that eventually led to you finally unlocking somewhere deeper. That's basically what they did with Dragon Stand. That feeling I wanted from the Straits of Devastation has been given to us in Heart of Thorns. Except, instead of being spread over 3 maps, Straits, Malcor's Leap, and then Cursed Shore with a final big meta push all the way down through Cursed Shore, they've instead condensed it all down to one map, the Dragon's Stand. And wow, I am happy that they did that. The results have been pretty phenomenal. I had a lot of fun doing the Dragon Stand. I seriously regret not having done earlier. If you guys are watching this video and you haven't played it yet, I seriously recommend that by the end of this video, you make some kind of attempt. It's very accessible. We'll talk about it in a second. Because ArenaNet have enabled themselves to do a lot of stuff. You might have noticed in some of the early maps as well, even from the betas you should have noticed this. ArenaNet made a decision with the way they were designing dynamic events and the way kind of the story and the lore was told. They threw caution to the wind when it came to repeating events making sense. So what do I mean by that? Well, Guild Wars 2 at launch, they put a lot of effort into pretty much every map and every event of the game. They put a lot of effort into having them naturally and intelligently cycle, so it seemed like that story could happen over and over and over again. My go-to example that I always think of these days is in Wayfarer Foothills, the very first Norn map. There is an event with a little kid who builds an army of snowmen to scare the Gruul away that are nearby. So the Gruul come, they have a look, they get scared away by the snowmen after you complete an event, they run off, then later on a different Gruul comes along, takes a closer look, realizes that they're snowmen, brings all of his Gruul buddies, blows up all of the snowmen, and then it kind of resets. Then the kid theoretically could have then thought, oh, I'll build more snowmen, and it just keeps cycling immersively. In Heart of Thorns, they never tried to do that immersive angle anymore. In Heart of Thorns, as soon as you reach Verdant Brink, you know, the day dawns in Verdant Brink, and the exact same story will happen the exact same way over and over again. It's like the ship's just crashed again, and then the ship's just crashed again. And by throwing caution to the wind there, that's enabled them to tell better stories with their open world events. And this absolutely is utilized in the Dragon Stand, where basically what we are seeing is a major breach of Morgemoth's defenses, one of his primary minions, the mouth of Morgemoth, actually being defeated right here, as well as 3 of his key agents. Remember before launch how we heard that Morgemoth had these 3 big badass legendary Mordrum that would continuously respawn and be cloned? You see them in Verdant Brink a little. Well, you find their cloning stations here in Dragon Stand and destroy them. Canonically, that's the death of them. And it doesn't matter that the map resets and goes again and then goes again and goes again, because ArenaNet aren't trying to make that make sense anymore. They've just decided, you know, it's a video game, and this is the way we'll do it from going forward, which I very much applaud. So, let's talk a little bit about the meta event. You enter the Dragon Stand either through the cheeky little portal that they added to the game for people who didn't want to push map metas, or you're one of these very rare people who actually managed to beat the Tangled Depths, the prior map's meta event, and the Order of Whispers blew through the Leyline Cave and allowed you access to the Dragon Stand. And here you'll find some packs have set up some basic camps. The large meta will not push unless you have a certain number of people ready. Think about World versus World. Do you remember the World versus World breakout mechanics? Where if you're massively outnumbered, your server doesn't own any outposts in the old Borderlands, you would get an NPC commander stood at your entrance, at your spawn, and if you brought enough players next to him, it would trigger the event and he'd march off over to, you know, try and capture some very basic areas in World vs. World. The same thing happens here in Dragon Stand. So this meta cannot push unless there are a certain number of people here already. That number is 15 people. There are 3 assaults, as I've already explained, just like in Straits of Devastation. There's a Northern Assault, a Central Assault, and a Southern Assault. And what you want is 5 people at the camp to start each of those assaults. Once 5 people have been registered all at once across all 3, the meta will push. So really, just 15 people across an entire map that can hold about 150 to maybe 200. The map cap does seem quite high on this one. It's very easy to accomplish, and the general tuning of the meta event is nothing like the difficulty we see in Tangled Depths, the map prior to it. It's nothing like we see in the Auric Basin before that, or even Verdant Brink. This is actually a very easy meta event. Largely, it is a bunch of escorts starting from the top right of the map, progressing to the bottom left of the map, and I've not heard of these things ever really failing. The meta gets most complicated right towards the end, where you have to kind of split your Zerg a little to run in giant circles in order to DPS a large boss in the center, and all 3 bosses have to be killed at once without any of them regenerating. But this is very easily accomplished by people just basically running in big circles, and that is it. If you get caught behind the Zerg, you can get flooded down by a lot of mobs, so there is some risk there, but dying, as always in open world Guild Wars 2, doesn't mean a damn thing. Yes, the waypoints are a fair distance away, as there are less waypoints throughout the Heart of Thorns maps, but you just waypoint, run back to the area you're at, and continue zerging around. Very little risk, very easy to accomplish. This does mean good things for a lot of us, because it means that many of us more casual players out there can participate in something that's quite key to the story, quite key to a lot of the rewards based on the expansion too, and something basically really badass and cinematic. What maybe it lacks in terms of really enjoyable and rewarding combat mechanics, it definitely makes up in terms of theme and scope of the event. It does feel truly epic to be among this massive group of people, and knowing that miles away elsewhere on the map are other immense numbers of players pushing through, trying to do stuff simultaneously to you to eventually get to the final goal of a big boss at the end. That idea that everyone's pushing all at once does come with a couple of downsides. Basically, they've got kind of a gating system where you participate in an escort. And let's say you're on the Southern Assault and you do really fantastic on your escort, right? Let's say you do really good and you get your escort in place really fast. You kill one of the bosses in this last map really fast. But the other lanes are maybe going a little bit slower. So there is quite a bit of forced downtime on this map. It kind of has to be there just to make sure all the invasions are synced up all at once. But what they'll do is they'll put you into a position where you get a brief period of time to actually explore the map at your leisure, maybe do some small side events, and then eventually you want to return to your main objective once perhaps the other lanes have pushed forward too. Those side events aren't a small matter either, don't get me wrong. They involve you gathering new allies for your big assault. At the start, it's just a few members of Pact with you, but you know, in the Northern Invasion, you will enlist allies in the Exalted you find nearby. In the Southern Invasion, you'll find ruins that belong to Ratanovus and get allies there, or you'll find ogres and help to enlist their pets. Basically, a lot of the characters that you've seen on previous maps will appear here on the Dragon Stand. That's actually something we heard about at launch. I don't think ArenaNet did it as much as I was expecting, but before Heart of Thorns, we did hear that, you know, Lorantha of the Wild was going to appear in Verdant Brink, which he does as a part of a meta event, and actually, he would appear in later maps too. That basically just means Dragon Stand. It means every now and then you'll find a meta event in Heart of Thorns in one of the previous 3 maps, and Dragon Stand has them reappear once again for the big final push. So what this means is, you gather many allies as you push through the map, and when you get to the final boss fight, you have lots of recognizable, hopefully, NPCs that you can kind of smile when you see that they're there contributing in this big epic battle towards the end for you. So I do really like the way that it works, and that downtime isn't necessarily a bad thing either. The whole meta, you're probably looking at about an hour. If you're kind of bad at it, maybe an hour and a half or so to push right the way through before you get to the final boss. And, you know, for some people, we're going to want to go to the toilet at some point, or the mailman might come and we got to go pick something up at the front door. Or hell, just time to be able to merch is all pretty valuable and something I do very much appreciate. It also is time for you to explore the map. So one thing I do knock with the Dragon Stand is how these timers really put a restriction on your ability to enjoy the map, especially the first time through. If you felt like Verdant Brink, the Auric Basin, or Tangled Depths were way too big, way too complicated, way too difficult, way too high intensity compared to normal maps like Queensdale or Kessex Hills to be able to enjoy at a really slow, nice, gradual pace. If you already felt that about the previous maps, you're definitely going to feel that on the Dragon Stand. Why? Because Dragon Stand always has you on a cooldown. Because they do dramatic stuff with the meta event, destroying areas of the terrain, revealing large areas of the map that otherwise are completely inaccessible and blocked off by vines, because they do stuff like that and they have to close the map down, you're always under a time limit. When you first join the map, you're under a time limit to kick the meta event off, and you only have a small area you can explore anyway. When you're in the middle of the escorts, you only have these small windows of opportunity, of downtime, to explore and get nearby points of interest, mastery points, vistas, you know, the small things that are scattered around this map. And even once the entire thing has been completed, you only get 15 minutes. This includes your time to claim the reward, to, you know, watch the ending cutscene and do, you know, that basic stuff. You only get 15 minutes to explore this entire map. And though it doesn't have too much verticality, it is still a big map. This really does make it feel not very much like a normal Guild Wars 2 map. I actually think, and I'm far less offended by this fact than I thought I'd be, I actually think it's really only fair to say Heart of Thorns has 3 main maps, and then the 4th one, Dragon Stand, is just so different in the way it feels. It feels just like a big mission rather than a standard map. But still, that doesn't mean it's not a lot of fun. It just means you probably have to go in there a few times to experience everything. But that's okay, because there's, you know, 3 armor sets worth of rewards to go for. There are 3 invasions. It's not like you're playing the same content each time. You just do a different invasion, and you get to experience some more stuff. So, let's talk about the final boss fight. Oh boy, this is very cool. I've talked quite openly on Twitch and even in a couple of videos as well about my distaste for the personal story with Heart of Thorns and how I felt it was a little bit lacking, and I'll be talking more in detail about that very soon. But to this, many people have responded to me saying, WP, wait till you play Dragon Stand. Dragon Stand will fill in some gaps. Dragon Stand will make you feel good. And to those people, I absolutely agree. Dragon Stand is an integral part of the story. I really think you guys should be playing this map map. Unfortunately, with the way that ArenaNet have designed things, because they didn't want to force people into, you know, open world content like this, which is basically not soloable, because they didn't want to force people into these situations, they've done the same thing that the regular personal story from Launch Guild Wars 2 did, allowing you to skip this map. What that means is the pacing of the personal story towards the end is very weird, very janky, and it just kind of throws you in the timeline to skip all the events that take place on Dragon's Stand. So you'll end up very quickly somewhere, you know, right towards the end of the story, which I won't talk about because of spoilers. But by playing Dragon's Stand, when you get to that general area of the game, you'll have a much better appreciation of how you get to where you are. And you will get certainly that big epic feel of a massive end game boss, this thing that we've been leading up to for, you know, 2 years now since the Living World very first began, and there is definitely a big payoff here. In terms of actual dialogue, characters we meet, you know, real substance like that, outside of just basically getting an epic feeling fight, I really don't think there's that much value here, but I think a lot of people will benefit greatly from playing this. So anyway, as you can see from the footage, what we are fighting here is the Mouth of Morgemoth. Mouths were already established story precedent back in the original personal story. We had the Mouths of Zaitan, but this guy is the only Mouth of Morgemoth we know to exist. It's a huge, damn awesome vine that the entire fight is built around destroying. So there are interesting mechanics here, definitely. Again, I think the risk of failure is very low, and I think that the battle actually probably drags on a little bit too long. But you've got an entire map worth of people, all 3 assaults come together at the end, and you fight on these small floating islands out above a swirling vortex abyss through which this giant snake-like vine is fighting you. There are various different elements to this fight. It doesn't really phase at all. But so you've got different things that the vine will do. The vine will try and bite onto islands to feed off of them. And if you don't break his break bar while he's doing this, he'll actually just chomp down on the island straight away, smashing it in 2. And if he does it again, he can destroy an entire island. So the idea of failure is all these little islands through which you're fighting the boss on eventually get destroyed, but I think the chances of that happening are very low. In fact, I'd be really interested to see what it looks like when they do all get destroyed, because I wonder whether any failures have ever really been seen at all. You know, the population of these maps just gets so high. As soon as a Dragon Stand is known to be getting pushed, they map cap out straight away. You can almost guarantee every time that you're going to have a full map of people at this point trying to fight this boss. So he can try and bite the islands. He'll try and wrap his way around them and crush them, spawning powerful Mordrum enemies on the inside that, you know, climb themselves, and you've got to deal with those. He's got one where he arches over the top of islands and shakes magical, horrible stuff all over people. All of these times that the Mouth interacts with the islands are opportunities to damage him, and you do kill him with your regular skills, fighting in the actual Guild Wars 2 combat. Far better than the glitter cannons we got to experience with the Zaitan fight. The Zaitan, while cinematic, didn't interact enough with the actual systems in the game, and the Mouth of Morgemoth really hit a bar Guild Wars 2 has never hit before. That's not even to talk about how this interacts with, you know, the masteries, right? So you're gliding all over the place. You've got your updrafts. People who have maxed leyline gliding get additional benefits while they're there, so they can zip from island to island directly. There is another mechanic where if he's attacking an island really far away from you, because this is such a massive battlefield, there are crashed helicopters that you can gather mortar shells from and then siege him from far away. There's generally always something to do. Always a little bit of risk there, and, you know, an awe-inspiring fight. Not just the first time, maybe not even just the second time either, but perhaps all 3 times you're likely to do this for each of the invasions. Something I do want to commend, you might not think this is something you should commend, really, but there were no stalling bugs that I've experienced so far, though I've heard tell of a couple of them. I've definitely not seen any yet, so the meta event definitely holds up to a lot of pressure and being hammered by a lot of players, which is fantastic. It ends with a really fantastic cinematic, that basically explains something that happened in the story you'd otherwise have no context for, and then you get to claim a chest. So there are good reward incentives here. Each time you do it, you can get some of the Laystone armor, and so you do it 3 times, you get medium, heavy, and light. And there is a mechanic, just like the airship cargo, just like the exalted chests, just like the Chak acid chests as well in Tangled Depths. This final map has noxious pods. So once the boss dies, the map will go into a final mode where even more areas back in the earlier areas of the map where you were originally escorting the Pact open up. So some doorways will open up, some caves will open up, some updrafts will appear perhaps. I don't know all of them directly, but more areas, new areas will be accessible to you. And by traveling to these areas, you'll find lots of noxious pods around. you can only open these by slashing them with machetes. So machetes are kind of like your Zephyrite lockpick, your bandit key, whatever. And you get a couple for completing the event itself, but then you also get, and having high participation, but then you can also buy them using all 3 of the previous map currencies. So by spending airship parts from Verdant Brink, Aurelium from the Auric Basin, and the Laystone crystals, by spending all 3 of these, you need all 3 for 1 machete, you can save up on these machetes, and you can open those for even more rewards and unique stuff from the Dragon Stand. But you only have a 15-minute period. So during this 15-minute period, you're not going to get full map completion. You're going to want to get vistas, you're going to want to get mastery points, you're going to want to get points of interest, and you're also going to want to get as many of these pods as possible. There are random events with various champions that you get to fight as well, and it's all just a bit frantic, really. They do this, I think, to force the map to close so that they can reset everything, regenerate all these islands, bring back all the vines, and put everything back to a 0 state. It probably reduces the chances of the map bugging and gives everyone else a clean slate chance to attack Morgemoth. So I'm not too sad about that, but it does disappoint me that you can't take exploration at your own pace here, and so do be prepared to go in there a few times. So yeah, that's pretty much Dragon Stand. Absolutely epic, fantastic stuff. Just go into it prepared for something that's, not a standard map in terms of exploration. I would say we really did only get 3 super normal maps for Heart of Thorns. This one's a lot flatter, there's a lot less there, but you're also much more restricted and basically participating in a very set goal. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of Dragon Stand. Spoilery stuff will slowly start rolling in on the channel from here forward. I had a massive smile on my face for the entire hour and a half or so I was in there, I suppose, from the escort all the way up to killing the boss. And I'd love to hear some of your experiences too, guys. If you haven't played in it, get in there and try it, and let me know after that. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.